Everyone, welcome back to FrontPageBets, the FPBcast, and it's training camp week for NFL. All 32 teams have reported, and the season's here, Gerry. There's the hay's getting put in the barn, and this is where we start kind of the end of the summer into the fall. College football season media days are wrapping up. You have the Big Ten media days this week, and college football will be kicking off at the beginning of August. NFL season has reported, so all the teams are full bore now into the 2022 season. And front page bets, we broke down a lot. We went division by division a couple weeks ago in the NFL, looking at the AFC and the NFC, and then we started our Power 5 conference breakdown for college football last week. So Gerry, as we head into the official start of the NFL season, talking about the front runners, if you look at picks to win the Super Bowl, you got the Bills, you got the Bucks, you've got the Chiefs, you've got the Packers, the Rams are in there, in that top 5, depending on what book you look at. But, so kind of the have and have nots, the teams from last year are kind of raised to the top, teams with quarterbacks, teams with, solid defenses. But when you get to the division breakdowns, obviously you've got 4 divisions in each conference. And it's not just all Bills and it's not just all Chiefs. It's, you've got some other teams that will vie for division championships in a playoff spot. But let's break down, let's start with the AFC and kind of look at division by division a little bit, and who we think is going to be able to kind of survive the gauntlet and represent their division in the playoffs. Could we have a team, a division with multiple playoff teams? Looks like we could. Wild card teams, starting with the AFC East, it's the Bills, and then it's everybody else.
Yeah, not a lot of competition there. Probably the most clear-cut division when you look at what they have coming back. Frustrated off of last year's, OT loss of the coin toss and eventually the game to the Chiefs. Josh Allen with, the ability to sort of take the next step and prove that he's an elite quarterback. Did a pretty nice job through the draft and free agency, shoring up a couple things. I like Buffalo a lot, and I like Buffalo to be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl ultimately.
Yeah, I think going, that's a smart pick. I like Buffalo if they can replicate what they did last year with Josh Allen, another year under the belt. If he stays healthy, he's a mobile quarterback. Likes to mix it up, likes to put his head down. He's going to have to stay healthy. He's going to have to be able to, to get through some of these games where, might be the smarter play to throw it away rather than try to tuck and run and make something happen. But I really like the Bills in the East. Then you go to the West. It's kind of, the Chiefs are, with Patrick Mahomes, it's, stop me if you've heard it before. It's kind of like Alabama in college football. The Chiefs are always going to be there. And I think as long as you have Mahomes as a quarterback and you've got Andy Reid calling the plays. Now, they did lose some stuff in the offseason. They try to make up for it in the draft, but losing Tyreek Hill, big playmaker, obviously was a huge part of their playoff push last year. But you're returning, Mahomes and Kelsey. The only really challenger there in the West is the Chargers.
Yeah, and I think a legit challenger because of the development of Justin Herbert, obviously. Interestingly, I think aside, probably not quite ready to challenge, but will be a whole heck of a lot better, will be the Broncos, obviously, with Russell Wilson making the move over from Seattle. It's going to be an interesting division to keep an eye on. And, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in that division now, obviously, who, you mentioned the potential for injury. I mean, that's really sort of the $64,000 question for any NFL team, right? You go from QB1 to the backup, and your odds diminish quite quickly. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how much better the Broncos get with Russell Wilson. I don't think he's ever really gotten his due as a quarterback and as a leader in Seattle, taking him to the Super Bowl. An MVP, sure, but to me, that's a guy who is going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and there'll be a lot of talk about Herbert. There'll obviously be a lot of talk, as always, about Mahomes, but I'm going to keep an eye on Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he could, obviously the X factor there, playing in a different city. what's going to be surrounding him and can he stay healthy? Another question, obviously, especially when you talk about quarterback play. The North, you got Baltimore. Speaking of quarterback play, you got Baltimore and you got the Bengals. So the top two teams in that division. Joe Burrow leads the Bengals to the Super Bowl last year.
Your guy,
and again, you've got some talent, young talent on that squad. I don't think they're getting a lot of the respect that they do. And are they a one-hit wonder? Can they flop this year? What's the sophomore campaign going to be like for a lot of these guys coming off that high of a Super Bowl? But I like the Bengals and then obviously the Ravens that goes on their quarterback play too. How good can they be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually agree with you in terms of people sort of overlooking the Bengals a little bit, because if anything, I think they're better, not worse than last season. The Ravens are a bit of a question mark just because what's Lamar Jackson going to do, from a contract standpoint too? Like, is he going to try to back up the Brinks truck by having like a huge year? Had some pretty dicey numbers last year in terms of QBR. So people will be looking toward him. I think, Baltimore made some nice pickups in the draft, some guys who are going to come in and make an immediate impact. I do have them as my favorite, as do the odds makers to win the division. But you're right. We shouldn't sleep on Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think, again, that's when you're coming off a season like they had, especially a late push with just, those close wins in the end, and their defense got a lot better as the season went on. So keep an eye on them. And then in the South, you got the Colts. And I just think we can stop talking after that, Jacksonville, Tennessee, but the Colts, how well will they be?
I don't know that I'd go that quickly away from that one. I mean, obviously the big story is Matt Ryan, coming in, taking over in Indianapolis, a team, that's sort of seemingly always on sort of the playoff cusp or, line, and that's an improvement. That's a big improvement. And, if you want to just call it a day there, fine. But, Tennessee is a very talented football team who a lot of people thought last season was going to go a lot farther than obviously they did. Ryan Tannehill has been grossly, up and down, inconsistent, throws a lot of bad picks. But I mean, you got Derrick Henry, you got some playmakers, you got a good defense. Indianapolis is not invincible by any stretch.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I think it's the worst division.
You just don't care.
In the AFC, Derrick Henry is the lone bright spot. I think Tannehill, again, he's in position to make the plays and make the throws, and then it's a lot like Kirk Cousins. There's some throws that he makes. And
he's a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins.
Come on. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying that you're riding that roller coaster where you're kind of watching the game through your hands like this. When is he gonna? As long as, and I think what hurt Tennessee last year, even though they had a great regular season, Derrick Henry missed 9 games.
Yeah,
and they still played well.
His health obviously is paramount. And such a dominant player and such a guy who can change the tempo of a game. Again, that's a good football team. Like I don't see them as not being a factor potentially in the playoffs. And other than Buffalo being sort of the gold standard, I'd throw them in the mix with any of these guys, really.
Yeah, I'm
maybe not Kansas City, but
well, I think you've got kind of your top 1 and 2, and then it's fighting for everybody else.
But again, Kansas City lost a couple of pieces too. So
and how do they come out of the gate, right? And how are they able to really kind of rebound from the loss that they had to the Bengals, where that second half they just completely disappeared in the AFC Championship game. So
and how good is Juju Smith-Schuster going to be? And how quickly are him and Mahomes going to connect? I think that's another key storyline.
Sure. And we'll see how that comes out of the gate. But I like the Bills coming out of the AFC, winning the East, rolling, going to the Super Bowl. I think for that franchise, for that core team that they have up there, I think that
what are the Pats going to do with no offensive coordinator?
Well, Bill Belichick's got it figured out, right? So, talk about another program.
Going to have to cut his no sleeve hoodie, make it a half shirt or something. He's got to do something different.
That's when's the last time you haven't really talked about the Patriots, right, going into the season? And it feels like they're just kind of if Mac Jones can play as well as he's capable of, but they're going to need a lot of help. And
I just think, I mean, if Buffalo weren't so good, I think they're probably arguably the next best team in that division. Probably not even arguably, but long way to go. And it's not all on Mac Jones either. They don't have playmakers. They don't have guys who scare you on offense. And you got Matt Patricia back in the fold, which should be a negative, as anyone who watched his antics in Detroit would attest to.
You're a little bit more familiar with that.
But well, and the Pats too, obviously, given my New England heritage. But I think Belichick's got a little bit left in the chamber. He might surprise somebody.
Yeah, and I think a team that could surprise a lot of people is Miami. You got Tyreek Hill down there. You get Tua. Again, how can he play consistently enough at quarterback? And is Hill going to be that much of a difference maker now?
Who do you like better as a quarterback, Mac Jones or Tua?
To Alabama guys, I think for as far as big play potential, Tua. When you come to a guy who's going to manage the game well,
as far as getting you to the playoffs,
I think Tua's got the better. I think Tua's got a better chance at doing it with the players he's got around him this year. And I think Tua, what we saw at Alabama, was able to make those guys. He had great players. He was able to get them the ball when they needed to get it. Mac Jones, was consistent. Tua.
I'd like to see Mac Jones with some better guys around him and see how that went. But I do think Mac Jones is a better NFL quarterback than Tua.
It remains to be seen. Yesterday I know Tyreek Hill said he was the most accurate quarterback that he, in the NFL. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. Let's move on to the NFC.
All
where
right.
we've got a little bit more parity, I think. You got Buffalo and the kind of Chiefs up there, but I think in the NFC it's still who's going to be the best team. Favorites come out of that is Tampa Bay Bucks out of the South. Brady's back, but he's also 45, in his mid 40s. Rob Gronkowski's not coming back, but you still have Evans. You've got a lot of playmakers around them to try to shore up that defense and the offensive line, where they had some guys, retire in the offseason. The Bucks out of the South, I like them. Then you got the Saints. Jameis Winston's back. Can he stay healthy? But really, can he talk about consistency? Talk about a quarterback that you just never know what you're going to get. I think you got that. So you got the Bucks, and then kind of the Packers, the defending Super Bowl champion Rams. When you're talking about teams that make it out of that, are going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. But starting with the South, Bucks, I think it's the Bucks to lose in that division.
Well, Brady's on his AARP card now, so
still better than most.
Health wise, we'll go back to worrying about that again. But he's got that magic elixir that keeps him healthy, whatever that is. Jameis Winston, my man had a great season last year, kind of quietly, and you talk about consistency. Certainly was inconsistent when he was in the chair in Tampa, but played pretty darn well last season. Put up some big numbers. Touchdown to interception ratio is outstanding. You don't have Sean Payton, drawing plays up or driving the bus anymore, which I think is a big negative. And obviously Tampa doesn't have Arians either. So maybe that sort of cancels each other out with two rookies in the head coaching chairs. Tampa's the more talented team. Boy, they may indeed wind up being the Super Bowl rep, but I don't know. I just can't say Tom Brady again. I don't know why. I just can't.
I think Leonard Fournette's going to be a difference this year too, as well, running the football. Yeah. If he's going to be able to, carry games by himself, or at least, salt away some games, because I think you're gonna try to keep Tom Brady as healthy as possible. And they had some injuries last year that really hurt Godwin and someone on the offensive line going into the NFC, to the playoffs.
Yeah, well, and they were on the cusp of winning that football game before my man Matthew Stafford worked his magic.
It's true. Speaking of the West, defending Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, their pick to win the West, 49ers right behind them. But 49ers, are they going to have a quarterback? Are they going to, and I think the Rams could be, the team to beat. You've got, Cooper Kupp, you've got Aaron Donald on the defensive side, Jalen Ramsey. I mean, they've got a super team coming back. They kept these guys together. They're still hungry. I don't think they're going to come in and really kind of, roll the ball on their helmets onto the field. I think they still feel like they're, even though as defending Super Bowl champions, they're not getting a lot of respect. I like the Rams out of the West. I like the Rams almost as much as I like the Bucs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, Stafford has got a lot more swagger, confidence, whatever you want to call it, in getting over the hump. He's always, in my mind, been an elite quarterback. Now he's a super elite, no pun intended, quarterback. I think he goes into the season playing with a kind of calm and cool and confidence that he's never really been able to before. You mentioned the weapons that they have, both offensively and defensively. They're as good as anybody. 49ers, with Lance coming in as the QB, that's kind of a weird, crazy situation to me. That's a pretty good football team, but to me, not on the same plane as the Rams are or will be. And then, you've got Arizona and Kyler Murray, and apparently he's got to have someone check his homework at night now that he's got that big contract. So if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. My goodness, that's an embarrassing story.
I mean, if you're an NFL quarterback, do you really need to have it written in your contract that you have to study film?
Well, to me, that was kind of the team throwing the finger at him,
right?
And like, grow up and stop playing, Super Nintendo, or, pardon me if that's a dated reference, kids. Sorry,
very dated.
I don't know what you do, but if you're playing video games these days, instead of working on preparing for the pack, you're probably going to get smoked.
Yeah, well, Super Nintendo, that was a pull. If you had said Nintendo 64, I would have been okay with that. But Super Nintendo,
Commodore 64.
There you go, little Atari. Oh my gosh. Let's move to the north with the Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers being back, who will he throw the ball to? But as long as that guy's your quarterback and you're playing in that division, the Packers are, I think, the team to beat in the north, and I don't think it's close.
Here is your crappiest division in football that you were trying to get to. You have Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers and his latest soul searching and arrogance, and an annoying guy, but a
that good hair,
darn good quarterback with darn good hair, which I am neither of those things. But Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins, we've already referenced him. Just a bum as a quarterback. There's no other way to describe it. You talk about bad decision maker. You've got, the Detroit Lions. Love Dan Campbell. God bless. They got off the schneid and didn't go 0 for last season, just barely eked a couple out. But that team's a long way from being a true NFL caliber team, I guess, as we'll see in Hard Knocks. It's just a bad division. I mean, the Chicago Bears, they ought to put a dome on Soldier Field, and then they ought to just implode the whole thing. I mean, that's a terrible franchise right now. And, I feel bad for Justin Fields to be trying to dig out of that hole, because my goodness, again, crappy franchise, new head coach, new GM. I guess I should cut them a little slack, see what they can do. But this season, they ain't going to do anything.
No, not this year. And then you've got the NFC East, which is, growing up on the East Coast, being outside of Philly, I've always kept an eye on this division. But you've got some of the, you talk about off the field stuff. Everybody talks about the Cowboys and the owner and Jerry Jones, but you look at Dan Snyder for the Commanders and all the train wreck that is off the field.
How about the spilling the milk under the rug story in the luxury suite? What is wrong with that man?
There's just a lot.
Holy cats, though. Like, that's the most dumb sophomoric, bad, 8th grade prank kind of thing that I just, the guy's an idiot.
Yeah, there's not a lot that you could say positive about the that ownership in that group, for sure. But then, but on the field, they got Carson Wentz, and it's I just
as
don't
good as
think,
they've had in a while.
Better than, yeah. I mean, I think some of the consistent, I think they've had some talent. I mean, obviously, this is a completely different team. If Alex Smith doesn't almost lose his leg,
Yeah.
I think they were starting to kind of gel a little bit, and being in Richmond and having worked for the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and Michael Phillips, the sports editor and the beat writer for the Washington football team, are now the Commanders, does a great job. So I'm a little bit closer to that. But I mean, Alex Smith kind of was the after that, and then the coaching. Ron Rivera, I think, is a great coach for this franchise if they could get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And then you got Jack Del Rio making. I mean, all the issues with Washington are off the field.
Most of them.
But then
there's still a pretty serious dearth of talent. I mean,
right.
Look, how about them Cowboys? Dak is back and seemingly healthy. That should be good enough to carry the freight there. Ezekiel Elliott's going to be better.
They've got the best talent.
Receiving core is deep.
Yep.
Defense has some playmakers. They should be comfortably a division winner in the playoffs. The Giants still stink. Daniel Jones still stinks.
The Eagles could be one.
The Eagles are probably the only team that could potentially do anything to, breathe down Dallas's neck if Dallas stays out of its own way.
Right.
If Dak Prescott doesn't get hurt again, if Ezekiel Elliott keeps his head screwed on straight, same old story really in the NFC least. Not as bad as the North, though.
Not as bad as the North, but again, you talk about it's probably one of the most watched divisions, just because you've got teams that transcend across boundaries. You've got Eagles.
Well, how good would it be for the NFL if the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins were all competitive again? It's been a while. Guys of our vintage grew up with that. And I don't mean to group you into my category because you're not quite there yet.
Not yet.
But seriously, it's bad for the league to have a bad Washington Redskins ownership. And maybe it's time for Roger Goodell to get off his backside and get that guy out. I mean, he's a disaster.
Well, I just don't think, this is always a conversation. The NFL owners are the only ones that can remove any other owner, and they're not going to eat their own, because I think in every owner's closet there's a few skeletons there, and so
more than not. But again, good of the game kind of thing, just like Donald Sterling in the NBA. I mean, eventually they had to pull the trigger, and a strong commissioner would build a consensus among ownership to say, hey, this is the sexual impropriety allegations, just the juvenile behavior, the trying to manipulate media. I mean, everything that he's done. I mean, it's a disgrace, and the National Football League shouldn't be about that.
Yep. And that's our wrap up of the divisions.
Wow, we got off track there a little bit, but
that there's the storylines. You going into camp, and can the distractions off the field, are they gonna? You can't tell me, and you and I have been around sports long enough to know that you want to separate the two, and you can't. The off the field stuff will catch up to you on the field, and vice versa. Ball don't lie. We know that. So looking at the NFL, training camp has started this week. All 32 teams are, out there sweating it out in the July.
Let's play football and talk about football instead of talking about jerky owners.
Well, there we go. We're not far away. We're just a few weeks out from.
Let's go. Tee it up. Let's go.
Let's go already. Jerry's ready. Got some preseason stuff coming your way. And the NFL season not far behind that. So we're going to call it a day here at the FPBcast, and we'll come back next time. We'll talk about college football, which kicks off as well. We'll break down some of those Power 5 conferences as well as teams that we like. But, for Gerry, we know where he stands on and off the field. Next week, we'll come and talk about more college football. Thanks for joining us here at FrontPageBets.